Hello and welcome into another episode of Locked On Wolves. Today on the show, a crossover episode with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. We're going to preview the Wolves Thunder Conference Final. We'll talk about keys on both sides of the ball, and we'll make predictions. It's all coming next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Beecken. I'm the host of Locked On Wolves. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and happy game day. The Western Conference Finals start tonight. This is a very special episode of Locked On Wolves with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder, a crossover episode. Lots of Wolves Thunder talk. It's all we're doing today, of course, with the conference final starting tonight. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder. All right, as promised, a crossover episode of Locked On Wolves and Locked On Thunder today. I'm joined by Rylan Stiles of Locked On Thunder, and we're going to talk about this Western Conference Finals series. There's so much to get to. Really fun. You know, a few years ago, I think we could have said a couple of young up-and-coming teams in the West. I think the Thunder ascended more rapidly from like, I don't, what was it, 3 years ago they played each other in the play-in, I think it was?
Yeah, 3 years ago.
3 years ago? Yeah. Which, like, you know, obviously SGA was the best player on the team then. It was on the Wolves, but like so much happened around them and a lot has changed over the last few years. So a lot to get to today on the show. The way we're going to do this is I'm going to ask Rylan a couple questions about the Thunder and kind of his take on the series. And then we're going to flip it. We'll do the opposite. Rylan will ask me some questions about the Wolves and what to expect in the series. Then we'll give some predictions and just kind of a general conversation about the matchup between the two teams. And for me, I think what's most intriguing about this series is kind of the push and pull of the matchups and how, you know, like the Wolves are obviously a lot bigger, at least in terms of true big men, than say the Lakers or the Warriors, in overall size, bigger than the Warriors. And it's not exactly the same with the Thunder, given Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren, and then obviously the overall length and athleticism of the Thunder as a rotation. But I'm really interested to see who guards who. I think it's pretty obvious, like, who's guarding the best player on either team, whether it be SGA or who's guarding Ant. But beyond that, like, what's the Julius Randle matchup look like? Who does Rudy Gobert guard? And by extension, who does Chet Holmgren guard? What's your take from a Thunder perspective? Like, how do you think OKC handles Julius Randle? I mean, he's arguably been better than Anthony Edwards for most of the first two rounds. And, you know, well, obviously Ant is the head of the snake, and that's who you have to pay the most attention to. Randle has kind of feasted on, you know, being that secondary guy. What's your take on how OKC will try and guard Julius Randle in this series?
Yeah, the Thunder are going to throw a ton of different looks at Julius Randle and at these Timberwolves in general, just like they throw different looks at even guys like Nikola Jokic, who are the best in the world. And typically you try to defend those guys with one key guy, but in reality, you can't do that. So with Julius Randle, I think that whenever they play double bigs, it'll be Isaiah Hartenstein who takes him up on those post-up opportunities and gets into his body and tries to deter him from taking over a game. And then Chet Holmgren takes on Rudy Gobert, because Rudy Gobert in the pick and roll can be very effective. Chet's a very effective pick and roll defender, though. And if the Timberwolves do want to just bog the game down and go away from Ant Edwards, go away from Julius Randle post touches and dump things into Gobert, I think that the Thunder would just welcome that. So even if you believe that they could change course and go with Gobert as an offensive option, I think OKC would be fine with that. And then in the non-double big minutes, that's when you see the Thunder needing to scale guys up, particularly Alex Caruso, defending Julius Randle the way that he did Nikola Jokic in Game 7. And then even Jalen Williams, J-Dub, who has been entrusted to defend fours throughout his NBA career to date, and even this season after the acquisitions of Isaiah Hartenstein and Alex Caruso, he's still been able to do that. He played center this year because of the unforeseen injuries in November to this Thunder team. So I think that Randle will see a lot of different bodies, from Hartenstein to Caruso to J-Dub.
Yeah, I think in my mind, I think J-Dub makes a lot of sense to guard Randle, and I don't think the Wolves are going to necessarily turn to Gobert for much offense. But like on the other side of the floor, though, that's also a question: is do the Wolves cross match that? They don't necessarily want Rudy Gobert on the perimeter. Do they put him on? You know, I guess Lou Dort would be the least. You know, last year they did that when Josh Giddey was on the Thunder. That was the plan: was put Rudy on Josh Giddey and let him play off of that. Lou Dort's a little more potent, at least as a shooter. Potent's not the right word. A little more effective as a shooter than Josh Giddey, but I'm curious to see what that looks like on that side of the floor. And you mentioned slowing the game down. I think that's going to be a key for Minnesota. OKC plays pretty fast, and when they do run, they run at an extremely they're really efficient when they do it. I guess, what do you think if the Wolves do try and play, like, I guess I mentioned kind of the push and pull of the matchups, but along with that, substitution pattern wise, like Chris Finch to this point has done a really good job of like scaling back Rudy's minutes when it makes sense, but Rudy hasn't, the Rudy gets played off the floor. That hasn't happened, but Chris Finch has been judicious with those minutes. Do you think the Thunder, like you mentioned, the double big minutes, and it's funny because the Wolves will do the same thing, obviously. Are the Thunder going to be impacted by what the Wolves do in terms of their double bigs, or are the Thunder just going to kind of keep their same rotation and be like, hey, we could play small, we could play big? Do you think anything rotation-wise gets tweaked based on the matchup?
Yeah, I think that it does get tweaked based on the matchup, because the Thunder have been a team that can react to whatever looks you give them. And both teams have this element. It's why I think that this is a fantastic matchup, because Nas at the 5 is exactly what Oklahoma City loves to do of playing small. Only like Nas at the 5 is actually a great option for Minnesota, whereas most teams don't have a good small ball option. So they're less of a dynamic in that way. But both teams have the dynamic of being able to go double big, solo big, and going small. And both teams feel great about all three layers to that rotation. So who's going to be the first one to decide how the game is going and try to dictate what dynamics to press? I think that the Thunder have been pretty stubborn with sticking with their double bigs to start games. And I think that will happen in game 1, I assume. But they're going to start with their 2 bigs plus J-Dub and SGA and Lou Dort. And then from there, I think that the first segment of the game will determine how the Thunder react to that. I personally think that their best punch against Minnesota would be to go single big and have just Chet Holmgren or Hartenstein at the 4 at a time. I think that it makes their guards more comfortable offensively. I think that you mentioned what it does to Rudy defensively. The Wolves, either way, either by leaning into their zone, which they should all series long, lean into their zone, or cross-matching Rudy, they're going to give capable but streaky shooters open opportunities, and it will come down to if the Thunder can hit them or not. But I do think that the rotation that Chris Finch should use is whatever rotation helps him protect the basketball. Like, however you think that you need to manipulate your roster to slow the game down, and not slow the game down so much of pace, but as eliminate turnovers and make shots and create offense, and to where you are making this Thunder team take the ball out of the net and not get it in transition, not get it off the glass. Because once that starts to happen, that's where the Thunder can eliminate their big weakness. Where they can't eliminate their big weakness, which is their half-court offense in this setting, is if you're consistently protecting the basketball and consistently making your shots, and they're forced to let you settle down into that zone defense, which, as much as Denver's getting a lot of credit for how they played zone against OKC, and they should, Denver and Cleveland, 2 best teams defending OKC this season, and they've done it both with that zone defense that they're capable of. So I think that it's going to come down to the Thunder probably reacting to Minnesota and their rotation.
Yeah, to your zone point, the Wolves don't play a lot of zone. I think something like half of their possessions as a zone defense this year came against OKC, across 4 games. And they just, like, for the reason you said, like, and we saw, and maybe we'll get into this a little bit, but the last game between the two teams, that 24-point comeback in the fourth quarter in OKC on the second night of a back-to-back, when they played in Minneapolis one night, the next night was in OKC. And much of that comeback came with Ant off the floor, and it was completely the Wolves just loading up on SGA and, making somebody else beat them, which is kind of cliche, but like, that's what teams have done. Zone is another way to kind of sort of do that, to try and cut off driving lanes and force somebody else to make shots, especially from the perimeter. Is that a strategy that, like, is that really the only strategy that's worked against the Thunder this year? Like, obviously nothing's really worked. They've been the best team in the NBA from start to finish. They're a top, 3 unit on both ends of the floor, and the best defense by far. But in terms of on the offensive side, when they've been beaten this year, has it been more of like, hey, the other guys haven't made shots from the perimeter, or has there been anything else that you've seen that has, like, disrupted the Thunder's rhythm at all?
No, I think that it's been teams that are willing to stick with that strategy of playing zone / loading up on SGA specifically and forcing other guys to do damage. And like that comeback game against Minnesota was Minnesota against OKC is a testament to it, because like the Timberwolves pulled Ant, but they didn't quit. They didn't stop playing. They kept playing to their identity, even though it wasn't working to that point. It's why the Thunder grew that lead because guys were hitting shots that weren't named SGA. But then what happened in the fourth quarter to make that comeback? The Thunder, and I painfully went back and charted this the day after that game, 0 for 14 on open threes in that fourth quarter, which opened that door up to the comeback and to the win for Minnesota. Where teams get in trouble is going away from that strategy of like when the Thunder role players and supporting cast are hitting those shots like that Thunder team was in the first 3 quarters of that game, teams try to adjust to something else instead of just taking their lumps and fighting it out for 48 minutes, because that cold streak can come. And all you're hoping for is that the cold streak happens in 4 different games and you get 4 different wins to win this series. I think that is the very best strategy to take down OKC. Obviously not infallible, but it's the best option.
All right, next we're going to turn the tables, talk a little bit about the Minnesota perspective on the series. We'll do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves and Locked On Thunder is brought to us by our friends at CarGurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting. But between the confusing prices and hidden fees, it can feel overwhelming. That's why I love using CarGurus. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full confidence. With over 4 million listings, CarGurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second-guessing yourself. If you need a deal you can trust, CarGurus will make it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. And maybe the best feature is the price drop alerts. You'll know exactly when the perfect car is available for your budget. It's no wonder that SimilarWeb estimated traffic data shows CarGurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with CarGurus at CarGurus.com. Go to CarGurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That's CarGurus, CarGurus.com, CarGurus.com. All right, let's talk a little bit about the Wolves' perspective on this thing, Rylan. What do you got for me?
Yeah, the first thing I have for you is just kind of bucking the trend of what we just talked about. Obviously, it'll be a team effort for defending SGA and for defending this Thunder team. But whenever you get down to the nitty-gritty of individuals, I loved what Jaylen Clark in particular did against Shea in this regular season. From watching every single minute of SGA's season multiple times, because I go back and watch the games the next day, Jaylen Clark is up high on the pantheon of guys who handled Shea. Obviously, so is Nickeil Walker, and so are a lot of different guys on this Minnesota team, but specifically those two. Like, you have 2 of the better Shea defenders. Jaylen Clark has not been a primarily focus in this postseason, it hasn't felt like, for Minnesota. Is it in Chris Finch's identity to swing him back into the rotation for this matchup?
I don't think so. I hope I'm wrong, but here's I think there's a break. Well, I don't know. It wouldn't be a great break glass in case of emergency situation if that's, but I do think that's like a fallback plan. I think plan A is obviously Jaden McDaniels, which everybody knows, but he's also prone to foul trouble. We know what SGA can do in terms of drawing fouls. I think Jaylen Clark is probably like Nickeil Walker would be next man up, and then it's got to be Jaylen Clark. I think the calculus, though, and the reason why I don't think he'll be in the rotation to start the series at least, is because the Thunder are such a good defensive team, and the biggest challenge for Minnesota is going to be, can they score enough in this series? Because the Wolves have a good offense, the Thunder have a fantastic, historically good defense, and they turn teams over a lot, as you mentioned last segment, and the Wolves turn the ball over a fair amount, especially in these playoffs so far. And Jaylen Clark is a, at best a net neutral offensively. He would be the worst offensive player in the rotation, depending on your feelings on Rudy Gobert or Mike Conley at this stage in Conley's career. But Clark just doesn't do a whole lot offensively. He's better, to be clear, he's better as a rookie offensively than I was expecting him to be. He was very limited at UCLA as an offensive player, so I wasn't expecting him to suddenly be decent in the NBA, but he was surprisingly good catch and shoot, around 40% on threes, very, very low quantity of attempts. But I think that the calculus here is, yes, he'd be a good matchup on the defensive end, but he doesn't give you enough on offense, and there's no margin for error there against this Thunder defense. So I do think there's a chance, hey, if McDaniels is a quick foul trouble, if Nickeil's, he was cold in the Lakers series, if he's cold to start this series, say they go down 2-0, they go back to Minnesota, maybe it's a bigger picture adjustment. It's like, all right, we got to go Jaylen Clark. The reason he played against the Thunder in February, obviously, was injuries. DiVincenzo was out, and among others, I think Conley missed a game. But I agree with you. On the ball, this side of Jaden McDaniels, he's arguably the Wolves' best pound for pound defender. It's just that, is there enough offense there from a rookie in the conference finals to go against the league's best defense? I'm a little dubious that that's the case. And I don't think Chris Finch will start there, although we may get there at some point in this series.
And along that same line would just be, when you look at this Thunder's defense and Minnesota's defense, like they're both exceptional. I do subscribe to the theory that in the modern NBA, these teams are too talented to take everything away, no matter how good you are defensively. And one of those areas that you've already touched on your show is just the Thunder's willingness to concede open corner threes. Whenever you're going to hound the ball and swarm entry passes and play up into live dribblers and try to play the passing lanes, something's going to be there, and it's going to be, can you make those passes to the corner and hit the open man? And then the question would be, how many guys on this Timberwolves team do you personally, after watching the entire season, trust to hit those open corner threes?
Yeah, I mean, there are several guys that every team has streaky shooters, I guess, but like the guys that you want to shoot the corner threes are, Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is really good in the corners. And he's also pretty good above the break, but he's really good catch and shoot in the corners. Mike Conley's great in the corners. Now I don't know how much Mike Conley plays. Like every team is going to target Mike Conley on offense for them when Conley's on defense. And so he's probably, his minutes will be limited, but Conley's fantastic for the corners. And Dante DiVincenzo would be the other one that catch and shoot wise is going to be really effective from the corners. Jaden McDaniels is the guy who teams are going to force to beat them. And a lot of times he's starting the possession in the corner and ends up with the ball in his hands in the corner. And I'm curious to see how that plays out in this series, because he went from, I got to catch and shoot, And a couple of years ago, he was like 39% from three. That wasn't as good last year. And that number was somewhere in the middle this year over the last, compared to the last two seasons. But what he's added to his game over the last couple of months, and especially in the playoffs, is he's not just automatically letting it fly. He's actually taking a second and thinking, okay, could I put this on the deck and beat the guy to the rim? And so I'm curious to see how the Thunder handle McDaniels specifically. Like if they're closing out hard, he's going to attack the closeout and get to the basket. But if they're not closing out hard, and I know the Thunder are really, really good at closing out on the perimeter, given their opponent 3-point percentage against. But also they're really smart defensive team. So I think they'll be under control, and McDaniels has to make the right choices. During the regular season, he was like 33% from the corners, which is really bad for a corner 3-point percentage. It's not good for an overall percentage either, but it's really bad for the corners. Overall, McDaniels was, let's see if I can find it. He was actually 33% overall as well. But he wasn't any better from the corners. And so he's got to make those right decisions. For the Wolves, it's, to your point, putting the right guys in those spots that could take advantage of, they can take advantage of anything that the Thunder do give up. In this case, corner threes, whether it's DiVincenzo, Naz Reid's pretty good from the corners, but DiVincenzo and Conley and Gilgeous-Alexander Walker would be the three that the Wolves will strategically try and put in those spots to hopefully have success against this Thunder defense.
Yeah, I think that this series could largely boil down to the other. So like as much as we get swept up into SGA and Anthony Edwards, and rightfully so, they're great players. Like what are the Thunder going to be able to have their streaky shooters come through for a series against this cross match and Minnesota zone? Is Minnesota going to have their streaky shooters come through whenever the Thunder for 2 straight years now have been willing to give away corner threes? I think that Naz Reid is a guy that could easily join the list of Thunder killers. Every team has these guys that like just kill their team. I think that Naz Reid can have a huge series in more than one ways, but specifically getting hot from the corner in the 3-point arc, of course. Now, when you're looking at Minnesota, another question would be, what in a playoff setting would you be more comfortable with if you had to rank these from 1 to 3? Double big, which we'll call Randle, of course, and Gobert. Just one of them on the floor at a time, or Naz Reid at the 5. I don't know if you want to call Naz Reid small, so I won't say small ball, but Naz Reid at the 5.
I mean, it's so, the context obviously matters. In a vacuum, I think they're best with both Randle and Gobert on the floor, and recency bias. They certainly have been best that way in the playoffs. They've been really, you could go back to when Randle came back from injury, basically March 1. They've been great offensively with those two on the floor together, and better defensively than when Naz is on the floor. I think the defensive. So if I had to rank them, I'd go double big first, and I'd go Naz at the 5 last. Naz at the 5 is challenging defensively. Now, of course, if you're playing an ultra small lineup, which OKC has the ability to play ultra small, then that's probably what the Wolves would do. And it can be a very dynamic offensive unit, depending on who else is on the floor. But defensively, that's pretty untenable, especially if you're playing against any sort of size. Naz is not that big. He's like 6'9". He's very long and he's very athletic, but he's not he's not a consistent enough rebounder. He's got good games here and there rebounding the ball, but he's not a consistent enough rebounder or a consistent enough, post defender or really pick and roll defender either. He's actually pretty good in space. Like if he ends up guarding somebody that's his size or even smaller on the perimeter, he can hold his own, although he struggled a little bit more than I wanted him to against Jonathan Kuminga in the Warriors series. But on the perimeter, he can be okay. He gets mixed up in pick and roll coverages, isn't great. He's not great, down low if he finds a big that wants to take him into the post. He's a pretty good weak side help side shot blocker. So there are some pros there when he's at the 5, but I think the Wolves are most comfortable. Like Naz Reid is a really good player. He won 6th man of the year last year. He was actually better this year, but wasn't going to win the award because the Wolves didn't win 56 games. But like they're at their best when it's Julius Randle and it's Rudy Gobert on the floor together. The ceiling of the team with those guys, because they both, Randle at this point is kind of sort of a two-way player. Like, believe it or not, I know it surprises Knicks fans, but he's been pretty good defensively. And so depending on the situation, the matchup, that a lot of times that is the Wolves, kind of best unit is having those two on the floor together.
Yeah, that's why I love doing these crossovers, because to me, Naz Reid's like the boogeyman of like, I think that he can take over this series. And to hear you put him 3rd on the list, which is, I know you're not sliding him, it's just comforting in a way, because I had him number 2. I thought, of course, your fastball is Randle and Rudy, but against the Thunder team that has inconsistent at best rim force, or just full head of steam, attacking the rim at will and going up strong at the rim. They have a lot of guys on this team that don't go up strong enough to where I think he's a really more than passable rim protector against OKC. I think that he takes away a lot of the Thunder's 5-out offense that they like to play because of all of the reasons that you mentioned. And then I don't want to, the Thunder I would not want to give up corner threes to Naz Reid and let him play off the back end, like you're mentioning, attacking closeouts or just cutting around this Thunder defense, which can get lost at times if you are gambling a tad too much, if your eyes get a little bit wide after creating a few turnovers.
Yeah, and the thing with Naz is, he's one of those guys that is super streaky. Like he scored 23 points in the first game against the Lakers. He had 6 made threes, and since that point, like he scored in double figures. I guess 4 out of the ensuing 9 games. So like he's pretty hit and miss, but there was a stretch during the season where he got hot from 3 and he could not miss. And that could easily happen. And to your point, like he could take smaller guys off the dribble. He could also take him in the post. He obviously could take bigger guys off the dribble. So, and I thought I had him as my X factor in the Warriors series. I thought given the weird kind of size that the Warriors are, that he would have a big series. He was really good in game 1, which they lost. He was like their only offense. And then after that, he was pretty quiet. So he's probably due. And there could be a little bit of recency bias there for me there as well, with Naz having a mediocre kind of pedestrian series against Golden State. He's probably due. And you're right. Like the Thunder are a matchup. If I remember correctly, he had at least one like 2015 or 25 and 15 game in one of his starts against OKC. So like it's a matchup that I think can work well for him. Definitely. Yes. Okay. We're going to go ahead and give some predictions and chat a bit more about this matchup and close out the show here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves and Locked On Thunder is brought to us by our friends at Skims. When I found out that Skims was making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about their quality from friends and family, so I had to give it a try. And let me tell you, it lives up to the hype. I've always had issues with underwear, fit, comfort, or just finding the right style. Skims changed all of that. Their men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs to classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. I chose the Stretch 5-inch boxer brief. They are comfortable. They don't feel like workout underwear, but they help you when you're active. I walk around quite a bit, especially for work. I go on walks with the dog and the family quite a bit, and they are extremely comfortable. It gives you all the movement you need for anything you do throughout the day. You don't feel like you're wearing gym clothes. Plus, they never lose their shape and they don't ride up. And definitely, it's definitely the way to go. Shop SKIMS Mens at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know that we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Skims is the official underwear partner of the NBA, WNBA, and USA Basketball. All right, let's put a bow on this preview. I think there's so much that's extremely intriguing about this series. I think from a Wolves side, like on its face, game 1, I think I saw the line at FanDuel was like 7.5. The Wolves are 7.5 point underdogs. Surprised me a little it was that high. I mean, the Wolves have 5 days of rest. Then again, last week they had the rest advantage over Golden State, who was coming off of game 7. They lost game 1. They could barely score. There was no offensive flow. What's your take kind of just like leading into the series, I guess, gut feel on coming off of game 7 that really, obviously the Thunder didn't have to work too hard once they built their gigantic lead on Sunday, but just given the overall rest, is that something that concerns you with the Thunder, or do you think it's a momentum thing and they got to, they've been at home for the last few days? Like, is that anything that concerns you headed into game 1, or do you think that's something that might actually help the Thunder because there's no rust to knock off?
Yeah, we're about to find out, because not to have a cop out, but for the first time this playoffs during a series, the Thunder got consecutive days off on Friday and Saturday, both in OKC, because they left right after game 6. So 2 days at home, played game 7, day off today at home in OKC, and now you're going to play game 1. And this is the first time that they've ever had the rest disadvantage with this current group. Like they've never played a series on this type of a turnaround. They were waiting for the NBA play-in for the first round 2 years in a row, and then 2 years in a row, they finished their first round series before the 4-5 matchup. So this is very new territory, and we'll see if the Thunder can parlay some of that momentum from that game 7, which was a big weight off their shoulders, not just to win the second round series, but to finally beat a really good playoff team instead of, the drudgers of who you've beaten the past couple of times with the Pelicans and the Grizzlies. So we'll see if they can carry that momentum in. I do think that the rest disadvantage is kind of equalized by the fact that you've played one game in the last 4 days, considering it could have been way worse, like an every other day scenario, like what Denver was dealing with heading into their game 1 that they still stole in OKC. So I don't think it'll play a huge part in it. It'll just be interesting to see how the Thunder react to being on this side of things for the first time. I do think that what people are missing, and I'm sure that I'm preaching to the preacher here, the notion that Denver OKC was for the NBA championship was always malarkey. I mean, like I can make a very strong argument that this is for the NBA championship, because it is. I think that the West will win the NBA finals, but this is going to be a tough series that I could see going either way.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at too. And I think in a minute here, I do want to try and make predictions. Not try. I'm going to make a prediction, and I'd love to hear your prediction as well. I do think it goes 6 or 7, and it is, it's not a coin flip. The Thunder are the favorites, and for good reason. They've had a historic season, really, on both ends of the floor, and so the Thunder are the favorites. But I think it goes 6 or 7, regardless of who ends up winning the series. I don't know. For me, I guess let's talk a little bit. X factor is such a cliche thing, but I think it is important. Like the way I would phrase it is, which non-star player impacts the series the most. And so I would, obviously take SGA, and I would take, at this point, Randle off the table, like the big names that you'd expect to really impact the series. In my mind, on the Timberwolves side, you mentioned Naz Reid. I think that's a really good answer. I'm going to go Jaden McDaniels, because I think the Thunder are going to cheat off of him a little bit. And with the way that the Thunder, pack the paint and do allow some corner threes, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities for McDaniels to either make the right choice and score a bucket or generate something for a teammate, or make the wrong choice or miss an open shot. I think he's going to be the guy that can really punish some of the decisions, the choices the Thunder have to make. Even more so because there's Thunder have more size than what Gobert has faced so far in the playoffs. He's going to be impactful, but I don't think he's going to be a big part of the offensive game plan. I think McDaniel, and also we could say on defense too, guarding SGA, not getting into foul trouble, doing a good job guarding SGA. I think McDaniels on the Wolves side is going to be key to watch on both ends of the floor. What's your take in terms of a Thunder quote unquote X factor player to impact the series in a big way that's not SGA?
I think for the exact same reasons you laid out for McDaniels, it's going to be Lou Dort for OKC. I think that defensively, he will get the first crack at Ant. I could see this series unfolding where Kaysen Wallace and Alex Caruso are better Ant defenders than Lou, because of, for one, Caruso's ability to present bigger size to him, functional size to him. And for Kaysen, his athleticism can match Ant's athleticism closer than the other two. But Lou will for sure get the first test at defending Ant. And if he's going to be able to hold up and wear down Ant, and you have the cavalry coming off the bench, that's a huge dynamic. But the only way that Lou can stay on the floor is if he's able to hit his shots from 3. And no matter what the Minnesota Timberwolves want to do defensively, whether they want to play zone or they want to play man and cross match Rudy onto Dort, they will undoubtedly be funneling open threes to Lou Dort. And this is a guy who has not shot the ball well this postseason, but did shoot 41% from 3. So he's gotten his career average as a guy who started out as a nothing burger from beyond the arc. His career averages is now 36% from 3, and this season was 41% overall. Can he come through in a big games and hit big shots to not only stay on the floor, but to just loosen up that that Minnesota defense? I think will be key.
All right. Anything else you want to hit before we get to series predictions?
I think that we're ready for series predictions. I would say, how concerned are you about the lack of ball handlers, or are there ball handlers that people are not taking into account when saying that Minnesota will have trouble protecting the ball?
No, that is a concern. It's definitely a concern. It's basically Ant who can still get loose to this handle, but he's the most talented one. I mean, Mike Conley, like, he's the most trusted, but at this stage, like we saw Golden State, it was when they were in desperation mode toward the end of that series, but they would randomly blitz him to try and get the ball, try and like force a bad pass, surprise him, sort of a thing. Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is by kind of the de facto backup point guard. I mean, really Ant is, but Gilgeous-Alexander Walker is, and he does not have a great handle. They don't have a backup point guard. Rob Dillingham was out for the first series. He hasn't played at all in the playoffs. Like, he's not playing. He played a lot against the Thunder this year because of the injuries in February, and actually played pretty well, especially in that comeback win. But like, there's not a backup point guard. It's Mike Conley, and he's only going to play around 20 to 25 minutes per game in this series max. And so it's Ant and it's Julius Randle bringing the ball up the floor. He's another guy that obviously the Thunder are going to try and blitz. That's my number one concern is the Wolves' tendency to turn the ball over, and the Thunder's just otherworldly ability to turn other teams over and turn it into points on the other end. I think if the Wolves lose this series in 6 or less games, it's going to be strictly because, not strictly because, but primarily because of turnovers. That to me is my biggest fear.
I would completely agree with you. You have to make the Thunder play in the half court, and they still have capable guys. Like, they can still win if you do that, but it's your best hope is to make them play half court offense.
All right. My prediction for this series, actually, I'm gonna pick the Timberwolves in 7, and I know that means that I have to win in OKC in Game 7. I know that's not a thing that people do, but the Wolves have been a really good road team all year, and that's held true in the playoffs, and I think that continues. I know OKC is a really tough place to play. I think that this is going to be a fantastic series. I think most every game is going to be very close and tightly contested. And I think the Wolves are able to pull it out in OKC in Game 7. What's your take?
Yeah, I think that Minnesota absolutely can win this series. I think that their path to winning this series is in 6. I think that your pathway would be to, you split 1-2, you split 3-4, and then, being such a good road team, you win Game 5, and then you win Game 6 as well, and you're able to win the series. The Thunder have been so great at responding to losses that I think that if you let them win that pivotal Game 5, and then they have 2 chances to try to eliminate you, and I would pick them in 7. So my overall actual prediction is Thunder in 7 for that very reason of how they've been responding to losses. Because you look at Denver, who won Game 1 of that series. They never won consecutive games against OKC.
Yeah.
OKC went on that 2-game winning streak. They lost Game 6, then they won Game 7 to put the series away. I think that you could see a similar thing play out here, where it's just, hey, it got to Game 7, and then the better team that's been bared out over the course of the 82 games actually ends up winning it. But Minnesota, I think, has a legit chance to win in 6. I would just go Thunder in 7.
It's going to be fun. It's going to be a really fun series. It's games every other day, which makes it tough to squeeze another one of these in there. But maybe if it becomes a longer series, we can catch up again and kind of check in on the adjustments that are happening over the course of the series. I think we all want at least an entertaining series. So, appreciate you doing the crossover, Rylan. And for anything Thunder related, to listen to the Thunder side for the whole series, check out Rylan at Locked On Thunder. Likewise for myself at Locked On Wolves. And we'll catch you next time over at our respective shows. Having a great conversation between myself and Rylan Stiles. This is going to be a really fun series. I genuinely believe the Timberwolves have a pretty decent chance to win. Tonight, after Game 1, Wolves Thunder will have Jack and Luke over at Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. They do a live postcast after every Wolves game, after every Wolves playoff game. And then that audio lives right here on Locked On Wolves. In fact, the next episode in your feed will be that audio from Jack and Luke. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. You can also watch on the Locked On Sports Minnesota app on both Roku and Amazon Fire TV. A reminder that for your second listen, you can check out the Locked On NBA Big Board Show. NBA draft expert Rafael Barlow reacts to every workout, interview, and rumor leading up to the NBA draft. Find Locked On NBA Big Board on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. The draft is only about a month away, and the Wolves have a pick this year in the first round, believe it or not. They have that Pistons pick, so be sure to check that out for your second listen. Of course, the Locked On Wolves podcast is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Remember, the Locked On Network is your local experts on all your biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast, and we'll catch you next time.